Yennefer of Vengerberg could have almost anything she wanted. Kings listened when she spoke. Courts feared her. The magic of the world itself answered when she called. And still, she spent her whole life aching for the only two things it could never give her: a child of her own, and the certainty that the man she loved her freely, and not because a spell had tied his fate to hers. Everything else she could take. These two she could only reach for, and never quite be sure of the answer. So this isn't the story of Yennefer's power. It's the story of what her power couldn't buy, and of a woman who refused her whole life to accept the one thing it cost her. Before the courts ever feared her name, there was a girl from Aiden, born with a twisted spine and a body the world judged before it had ever heard her speak. Unwanted at home, she was sold to Aretuza, the academy that makes the continent's sorceresses for little more than a handful of coin. Aretuza offered her no comfort. What it offered was power and a way to remake everything she had been born as. She refused her place from the very start. She clawed her way up with a fury that never cooled until she stood among the most powerful sorceresses the continent had ever known. And the crooked shape they had once mocked, she remade entirely, into beauty, into poise, into command, in a transformation as painful as it was total. But power like that is never free. For the sorceresses of the continent, that power comes at a price. Most of them are left barren, unable to ever bear a child of their own. It isn't a curse laid on them by an enemy. It's simply the cost of what they are. And most sorceresses make their peace with it. They accept it as the cost of a power most people can't even imagine, and they don't look back. Yennefer never made that peace, not once, in all her long life. She wanted a child, wanted it with a need that never dimmed, and she spent years searching for some way to undo what her power had taken from her. Healers, spells, bargains with things best left alone. Nothing worked, and still she refused to stop. There's a man we've already talked about who carried the very same wound. Geralt's body was made barren too, but his was taken from him on a table as a child by men who decided his future before he was old enough to argue. Yennefer's was different. Hers wasn't forced on her by anyone. It came woven into the very power she had reached out and claimed. Two different sources, the same empty place where a child should have been. Geralt had long since accepted his. Yennefer never could. And here is where it gets interesting, because a past like that doesn't just sit quietly inside a person, it shapes everything they become. The Yennefer the world meets is not soft. She is sharp enough to cut, cold when she chooses to be, proud in a way that makes powerful men uncomfortable. She walks into the courts of emperors and speaks to them as an equal, and they let her because crossing her is more dangerous than listening. It would be easy to mistake all of that for cruelty. It isn't. Not really. The girl who had been judged and sold and made over had never once forgotten what it felt like to stand at the bottom, at the mercy of people who looked at her and saw nothing worth protecting. And she had made herself a quiet promise that she would never look that powerless again. So every hard edge she shows the world is armor, the coldness, the control, the refusal to ever need anyone, all of it built deliberately by someone who decided that being feared was safer than being hurt. But armor has a cost of its own. It keeps the blades out. It also keeps almost everyone at a distance. And it makes the one thing she could never control, whether someone truly loved her, under all that armor, even harder to ever be sure of. Because the deepest wound her power ever left her wasn't the empty cradle. It was a question she could never answer. It begins with a djinn, a creature of immense, dangerous magic. The first time Yennefer and Geralt ever met, that djinn nearly killed them both. And in the chaos, to save her life, Geralt spoke a wish. He wished their two fates bound together, tied one to the other, so that whatever came for her would have to come through him as well. It saved her, but it also left behind something neither of them could ever quite untangle. Because from that moment on, they were drawn to each other, again and again, across years, across every good reason to walk away. They loved, they fought, they left, and they came back. And underneath all of it sat the one question that the most powerful woman on the continent could not answer with all her magic. Was any of it real? Did she love him? Or did a wish, spoken once by a desperate man, simply tell her heart what to feel? Think about what that does to someone like her. She can bend kings, she can bend the elements, she can reach into the world and reshape it to her will. And the one thing she cannot reach, cannot test, cannot command, cannot ever be certain of, is the truth of her own heart. In the end, there was only one way to find out. They hunted down that djinn again, and they broke the wish, severed the bond completely, so that whatever still held them together, no magic was holding it there anymore. And when it was gone, when there was nothing left to compel her, and nothing left to blame, Yennefer was still there, still his, by choice. The answer her power could never give her, she found the only way it could ever be real, by letting the magic go. And then, the thing she had searched for her whole life arrived, from a direction she had never once thought to look, not from a cure, not from any spell or bargain or healer, but from a child who already existed, a girl with no mother to speak of, who needed one. She wasn't Yennefer's by blood. She never could be. That door had closed long ago. She was bound to Geralt by an old law, a debt of destiny, long before Yennefer ever entered the picture. And somewhere along the way, almost without deciding to, Yennefer became her mother anyway. It was nothing like she had imagined all those years. There was no pregnancy, no child of her own body, none of the things she had raged and bargained and searched the world for. Instead, there was a frightened, gifted girl who needed someone fierce enough to keep her safe, and a woman who had spent her entire life becoming exactly that fierce. The power that could never give Yennefer a child of her own in the end had nothing to do with it. She didn't conjure this, she didn't command it, she couldn't have, she simply chose it, and was chosen back. The most powerful sorceress on the continent became a mother in the one place all her magic had never thought to look. Not inside herself, but in a daughter the world had quietly placed in her hands. So this is the truth of Yennefer of Vengerberg. The world remembers a cold, brilliant, dangerous sorceress, beautiful and untouchable, sharp as a drawn blade. All of that is real. But it was never the center of her. The center of her was refusal. She refused to accept the wound her power left her with. She refused to let her own coldness become the whole of who she was. And when she finally found a love and a child, the two things her power could never simply hand her, she refused to doubt them into nothing and chose instead to hold on. She spent her whole life learning the one lesson all her power could never teach her, that the things that matter most can't be taken, can't be commanded, can't be conjured out of the air, a child, a love that's real. Those can only be chosen and given and kept. That is Yennefer of Vengerberg, not the cold sorceress the stories remember, the woman who never once stopped reaching for what her power could not give her, and in the end, found it anyway. So let me leave you with the question that has followed Yennefer and Geralt for as long as people have told their story. They broke the wish that bound them, and they stayed together anyway. But you can never fully prove a thing like that, not even to yourself. So, what do you think? Did Yennefer truly love Geralt freely all along? Or did a wish, spoken in desperation, shape a love that was never entirely her own? And the harder question underneath it, was her refusal to ever accept her fate the best thing about her? The strength that made her who she was? Or the wound that made her cold and cruel and almost impossible to love? If you've come this far with us, through the Witcher who couldn't stay neutral, and now the sorceress who couldn't command the only things she wanted, then you already know what kind of stories live here. Subscribe and walk the path with us. Because the family these two built, the Witcher, the sorceress, and the girl who became theirs, was never going to be left in peace. Far away, across the cold that lies between the worlds, something had already caught the child's scent. The continent knew them only as a legend, spectral riders across the sky, an omen of war and death, the dead come riding. Every word of that legend was a lie. Next time, we find out who truly rides in the wild hunt, and why they would cross worlds to take a single child. That story is coming.